How's everyone doing? Thanks for joining me on my small engine repair channel. Today's project is this Remington two-stage snow thrower, and the problem the customer is having with it is it won't start. So let's take a look at it, see if we can't fix it up for them. Alright guys, so the customer brought this in the other day before winter gets into full effect and the first snow flies. And the problem they're saying is that it won't start. It's actually only about 2 years old, which is pretty much what I see as well. It looks like it's in pretty much brand new condition. So it's been sitting, and I don't know if they tried to start it this year or it wouldn't start last year. I suspect they pulled it out of storage and just tried to get it started and it wouldn't start. So let's take a look at it, see if we can't figure out what's going on with it. So first thing I'm going to do is just to check to see if there's any gas and oil in it. And unfortunately there is some gasoline in there, so I can guarantee you that's at least from last year. It doesn't smell great. It's not the worst I've smelt though. The oil, there is oil and it looks pretty clean. I would suspect this thing maybe has 15 hours of running time on it, maybe. Alright, so let's get this thing fired up. Let's see what we got, or try to get it fired up. We got choke, key is in. I hear air, but I'm not sure that that's actually pumping any fuel in there or not. And let's see what we get. So we got nothing. So it definitely is not going to start. So what we're going to have to do is start taking some of these panels off right here and see what's going on. We'll expose the carburetor area, and that's where I want to start with it, see if it's actually getting any primer fuel. But even if it's not getting primer fuel, after a little while it should start with the choke system. Alright, so anyways, let's dive into it, and we'll get this panel off here. Alright, so it looks like a couple 10 millimeters. This choke lever should pry up. There we go, just comes off. Alright, take the key out. And there's another 10 millimeter over here. And sure guys, there it is right there. Alright, one more here. Okay, now there's probably a primer line attached to the other side of this, so just be careful not to pull it too far. We don't want to rip that off. And then there's probably a wire for the key switch, I suspect, as well. Alright. Actually, I'm just going to leave that attached there. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of release this primer line, and then I'm going to take off these two Phillips screws, which I've already pretty much loosened off here. And then this whole kind of assembly splits in two and comes up through the top. Alright, so it's going to come up over top of that choke shaft, and now we can kind of see the intake. Alright, this is down in here. You can see the choke butterfly valve. You can see right now it's closed. Now I can open it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to spray some carb spray or some quick start down into the throat of this carburetor here, and then see if this thing's going to fire off. Alright, so I'm going to put the key back in here just to make sure that we're going to get ignition. I'm going to spray some carb spray in there, or quick start, so I know it's getting fuel. If it doesn't start after this, then we can assume that it's not a fuel problem. If it does start and die, then we can assume that there's something going on in the fuel system here. Alright, so there you go. So it is definitely a fuel system problem. It could be a fuel delivery problem. Maybe there's a clog in the fuel line or something. Maybe this float bowl is not getting filled up because the needle and seat is blocked, or it's stuck closed. Maybe the passageways in the carburetor itself are clogged. So we're gonna have to dive into this. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take this bowl off, and that's probably a 10 millimeter bolt here on the bottom, and this whole bowl should drop down. I'm also going to clamp these this fuel line here just in case the fuel is flowing into the carburetor. I don't want it to completely make a mess here. Alright, so I got something to catch the fuel. I got my fuel line pliers ready to go. And alright, so there's definitely fuel coming out of this carburetor. It actually smells pretty bad. So I'm going to suspect that this is a case of bad fuel and not emptying the fuel at the end of the season before you put it away for storage. I can't stress that enough, guys. Empty out all the fuel. Okay, so there's not a fuel delivery problem for sure. The fuel is constantly coming out. The needle and seat will close it off if I actually lift up the float. Okay, so we don't have a needle and seat problem. Alright, so let's go ahead and clamp off this fuel line then. Stop the flow so that we can work on this carburetor a little bit more. Well, let's actually take a look at this fuel. Some of this debris that's in there is leftover debris. Can you see this little bit of jelly right here where my finger's pointing? That is not a good sign. There's also a little bit at the bottom of this bowl too. So we definitely got a fuel issue. We're going to have to drain this entire tank of fuel, which is pretty much full. And we're going to have to clean out this carburetor. I've got two 10 millimeter. Alright, now we're going to pull this guy off. Looks like this plastic piece comes off first. There is a breather, crankcase breather tube that is connected there. I'm hoping I can get this off and just move it up and out of the way. Alright, and I might have to take that off, but we'll see. All right, then there is a gasket. There are two metal spacers there too as well. Don't lose those. All right, next thing we're gonna have to do is take off this fuel line. So just get a pair of pliers for that. Okay. And just move this clamp out of the way. And let's see how easy this fuel line is gonna come off or not come off without messing it up here. I'm going to use these fuel line removal tool that I made. And I got a rag under there just in case. Catch any fuel. Okay, nothing there. Now, we have to pull this out gently. And back in here, there's two linkages here. We got the throttle linkage, and then there's a return spring, tension spring. So we're gonna have to take those off. Just be careful, that spring, it might be under a little bit of tension. We don't want it to go up and underneath this area. So grab it and just slowly release the tension on that, and it should stay outside of this area. You don't want it to go up and underneath here, otherwise you're gonna have to take a whole bunch of stuff apart. Alright, I get some pliers here, needle nose pliers. Just slowly release the tension. Okay, that's good. It's just gonna sit there. Now this guy, usually it's just a matter of moving the throttle linkage here all the way over and then lifting this up and out with some slight pressure. Now usually you have to pull it out, the whole carburetor, you pull it out a little bit to kind of create a little bit more space there. And this might be hard for me to do one-handed. There we go. You can see I've pulled it out far enough now that I can actually just lift this linkage right off. And now I can pull my carburetor off. Now there is I think what I'm going to do here also is, before I do this, just so I don't have to mess with the routing of the primer line, I think I'm going to take the primer line off here and just leave this the primer line here. There we go. And now I can take the whole carburetor right off. Alright, let's take you over to the bench here and get into this carburetor a little bit more. Alright guys, so any carburetor job I do, you're pretty much primarily focusing on the areas where there's small passageways. So on this particular style of carburetor, much like a Honda or a Kohler style carburetor, there's a main jet down in this hole, this pickup tube. You're not going to be able to see it. See if I can shine a light on it for you. Alright, so there is the main jet. You can see it's got a slot in it for a slotted screwdriver, but not just any slotted screwdriver. You have to get one that doesn't have a flared out shank here. So this is a nice straight shank. So what I'm going to do is stick that in there, and it's brass, so it's very soft metal. So you have to be very careful with these because you'll strip them very easily. And you push down with quite a bit of force and then turn it. And then once you get it free, then it comes out very, very easily. Alright, and then a lot of times it'll just fall out. There we go. So you have a main jet here, and you have an emulsion tube. I'll come back to those. Okay. Next thing, just take out the float pin here. You take your float and your needle, which is there. It's got a nice little rubber tip on it. I like these style. Nice rubber tip on there. You're kind of just looking for the rubber tip, see if it's deformed. If there's a ring around it, which means it's probably not making a good seal, but we know it's making a decent seal because we tested that with the fuel shutoff earlier. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do here, this passageway is now a large passageway, so we're not going to worry too much about that. We'll spray some carb spray into any of these smaller holes. This is where the fuel comes into your carburetor and then comes out through that needle valve and fills up the float bowl, which is up and underneath here. There's a couple of small holes here and here, okay, and then there is a idle jet right here, which you can take off. I just use my same screwdriver there and spin this guy out. Now you can spin it in and find out how many turns that this is an idle screw for your circuit right here, for your throttle circuit. So you can turn it in and then count how many turns in it was screwed in, and then pull it all the way out afterwards, and then screw it back all the way in and pull it out however many turns. But I'll show you an easier way. They're all usually set up around the same spot, and then you just wedge your screwdriver up and underneath this idle jet, and this idle jet is going to have a really tiny hole in the end of it as well. Okay, so it's got a big hole through the center, which never clogs, but it's this little guy right in the tip, this little brass jet in the tip that we have to worry about. Okay, so for this guy you have to use a really fine piece of wire. So I just got a piece of wire brush and I stuck it into this matchstick, and that seems to go in there. If you can see it, but it's going straight through there. There's no resistance at all. So this idle jet is nice and clear, which is nice. Now we move on to the main jet. Okay, and this is our problem right here. This main jet has a hole straight through the center of it, and you should be seeing daylight through there, or white, and there is absolutely nothing. It's completely clogged up. So that is not allowing any fuel to go from the carburetor bowl and up the pickup tube through this jet. Okay, this meters the amount of fuel, the size of that opening. So what you can do is you can either take that same fine wire, or I like to use something a little bit thicker, like a bread tie. Okay, and I'll stick that through, and I don't know if you can see the end of that. It's not going to show you, but there is some debris on the end of that. And actually take a look right there, right at the end. See what I actually pushed out of the end of that jet. It is a glob of congealed jelly fuel. Okay, and that's what happens when your fuel sits in your machine for too long. It actually gels up in these little passageways. Alright, and then it doesn't allow the fuel to pass through them. Okay, so I haven't cleaned it 100% yet. I'm still going to use a little bit of carb cleaner, but you can see right through that hole now. Okay, so that jet is cleared out. Now the other thing you're going to want to spend a little time on is the emulsion tube. Okay, this emulsion tube also has a whole bunch of little holes that pass through. I don't know if you'll be able to see those or not, but yeah, you can see there's some holes right there. So these don't get typically clogged as much as that main jet. That's usually your culprit. But to get these passageways nice and cleared, you just do the same thing. Just run a bread tie, or if a bread tie is too big, okay, you can also just use that smaller, finer wire, okay, and just run it through those holes. Make sure they're all clear. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is spray some carb cleaner through all these little passageways, alright, and also these ones here, and then through there, through the main idle jet passageway there as well, and just spray everything with some carb cleaner and then compressed air, and then we're ready to reassemble. The other thing you want to do, guys, is make sure you clean out all this little gelled up jelly fuel out of your carburetor bowl as well. Just again spray some carb cleaner in there, nice clean towel, and then just hit it with some compressed air at the end. Okay, same thing with my little idle jet here. I've already cleaned out the other ones. Have to spray some carb spray, compressed air, and she's ready to go back together. Alright, so I'm going to put it all back together, and then I'll come back and reassemble it on the machine. Alright, that's it. She's back together. Now I'm going to put some fresh fuel in this thing and see if we can't get this thing to fire up for us. So one last thing before I put some fresh fuel in there is I'm going to put this shop towel in there, a pair of long needle nose pliers, and just kind of wipe it around in there and try and get sort of as much as of the old bad gas and debris and all that sort of stuff out of there. And then I'll blow some compressed air in there as well, just to try and get it as clean as I possibly can inside the tank. Alright guys, so keys in, throttle's up, choke's on. I'm going to get it some prime and listen this time. Hopefully I hear some fluid. Yeah, definitely hear some fluid. Alright, so let's see what we get. Okay guys, there you have it. Definitely runs very smoothly at all throttle settings. Function tested everything. The transmission's working, the auger is working, the chute control is working, so the light is working as well. Everything is working as it should, guys. So I think that's a wrap on this one. I'm not going to do a full tune-up on it. It's only a couple years old. The oil looks good. I'm sure the spark plug is just fine after probably 10 hours of use. So I'm happy to give this back to the customer with it in running condition. So this is just another testament to what the ethanol in today's fuel does to our small engines, guys. So if at the least you're going to store it with any fuel in it, try and run some stabilizer through it, and then fire it up like once a month and let it run for 5 minutes throughout the summer season. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it was informative, and if you like the video, please smash the like button down below, and if you're not a subscriber already, please consider doing so. And until our next project together, take care.